It's, you want no pray for us.
Well, Lord God, you know how much I don't enjoy video. Um, but at the same time, there's people out there that may watch this that they need encouragement from you, especially at this time. I pray that we could help someone out there get over fear and be willing to step up to the plate and do whatever you ask to do, knowing that you give
and see if our volume's even on. I don't think our volume was on.
Well, it's
Should we start over?
closed captioning though, right?
I just got some of those no volume. All right, well, we have volume now, so maybe we get to start all the way at the beginning.
Read my lips.
That's
We're
good.
gonna-
Some of the stuff I already said was blasphemy. So.
Yours was blasphemy, mine was brilliant, and I don't know about yours, Dan. So,
Mine's forgettable.
welcome to Pastor's Perspectives. We're just going to kind of try to start this thing. I just got a text that says we didn't have audio. I'm going to blame it on our studio engineer
I just got a
guy.
text too.
There you go.
That's
Perfect.
amazing.
It is amazing.
I don't have a phone.
So now that we know what would happen there, we're just going to kind of just jump right back into kind of what we were doing. So if you're still with us, we'd love to have you comment. Let us know anything that you'd like to have us know.
Well, actually, that's
comment.
confirmation that people actually watch
Yeah, that's good.
because they texted us. One of the things that we were talking about was just how fired up Josh was to deliver this message, and it's something that we need to hear. We will be going through tough times. There's tough times on the horizon, and there's been tough times in the past. Somehow in our American Christianity, we believe that God wants for us to just have a smooth, easy life, and it's not like that. Actually, at one point, John the Baptist was questioning whether Jesus was the one because he was anticipating even more of a conflict. And
Right.
Jesus makes an interesting statement. He says,
Remember that.
you know what? The kingdom from all along has been forcefully advancing, and
Yeah.
violent people are opposing it. And that's was the case back then with the prophets and stuff like that. And you gave us a story of a prophet, and it's going to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible describes up until the last days, be like birth pains. It's going to increase, and I don't know where we're at in that spectrum. I wish things, were so much easier, but they might not be.
Yeah.
And the church still has a place in that, and we need to be forcefully advancing the kingdom. And I think your call today reminder to us, hey, we need to get back in the game and get out there, and be the enforcer for somebody else. I like that imagery, and so thank you for reminding us about that.
Yeah, and
Well,
just
explain what you meant by enforcer. Because some people may not have been there this morning. You
Sure.
know,
Absolutely.
and I like what Josh had to say. I'll just, if you want me to recap
I'd
it,
love to have you recap.
because he was talking about hockey, and coming from where I come from, Kenosha, Wisconsin, we watched Blackhawk hockey, and that was back when it wasn't really hockey; it was more of a battle. But you mentioned Wayne Gretzky and how he's really good, but the fact is that they would always hammer that guy, and so on their team they would have one guy that would kind of trash the people that were hammering him, so that he could do his job. So they had his back, and they came after that man. The other guys with a vengeance that would try to attack the guy that's trying to score, and I like that. I like that team because sometimes we need to run interference for other people, and sometimes that's not uncomfortable, or it is uncomfortable. But we need to do that for each other.
and really the idea behind it was who am I willing to entrust my life to?
Yeah.
The idea that I don't want to know if I want to entrust my life to somebody that's every time the challenges are coming up that they're gonna they're running away or they're bailing, or when I'm trying to shoot a hoop or whatever and I got three guys trying to guard me and I was
Right.
trying to use that illustration. There's a part that I need the guy that's gonna have my back, the guy that's gonna be there, that's gonna do the right things to make that happen. And so the idea is, I think for me, when I want to be this sermon series about Christ's love letter to the world, I believe that I need to be faithful. I need to be faithful to you guys. I need to be faithful to the church. I need to be faithful to those that are watching, and ultimately God he's always faithful. He's never gonna leave us nor forsake us. He's always gonna have our back, and we know that that's secure. But I guess for me, a part of me says, are we really the church right now that is being faithful to each other and making sure that the kingdom is being forcefully advanced, and if not, then I think there's a check in my spirit that says, boy, maybe there's more that we need to be thinking about.
Right. And there is strength in numbers. Solomon in Ecclesiastes says 2 are better than 1.
Mm-hmm.
And as he's describing that, he says, hey, 2 coming together can keep each other warm, and by the way, they have each other's back,
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, and 3 are even better. And it is important during these times that we really go out of our way to make sure that all of us understand that we are not alone in this, and that we have people who are there to defend us and to help us and to go along. Now, in the story that you told us today, and Dan, I know you love this story about Elijah.
Yes, I do.
He got to the point where he was thinking he was alone. And-
Which is interesting because when you read over the story and we tell the story over and over, we forget one thing. Remember you mentioned that after he called down fire, he went out there and prayed. And he said to his servant, go look. Now remember when he finally runs away from Jezebel and he runs to Judah, what does he do? He leaves his servant there. So was he alone? He wasn't alone.
Right.
There was someone by his side that had his back, I think.
Yeah, and I think that all leaders and prophets and people like that feel alone, even if they have a few people that are around them serving them or to that level. And I think the responsibility is so great, and they feel the burden. And that's the thing, is why I liked the story of Elijah, is because and I like the stories of prophets and the stories of people in the Bible, is because they're not all perfect and they all make mistakes and they all fall short. And the encouragement part for me is, even if I could compare, and you can't compare yourself to Elijah, but the idea is I've witnessed a lot of great, powerful acts of God in my life, and there are times when I do exactly what Elijah does, which is, why am I all alone here? I think that okay, it's okay. God still showed up. God still was faithful to him, and yet the amazing thing is that he didn't let him stay in the pity. He didn't let him stay in that moment. He's like, get back up and go.
Well, and the beautiful thing about that part of the story, after he had called down fire, I mean, come on, let's look at what he did. First, he went away to the brook Cherith, and then there he had prayed that there was going to be no rain. While he's there, he's getting fed by ravens, and they have bread and meat, which I kind of fun thought. I think these ravens are sitting there waiting for the Happy Meal, someone reaching out at the drive-thru and they grab it and take off with it, because ravens are thieves. But so he's getting fed there, right? And then he goes through all this stuff all the way up to Sidon, way up there in Jezebel's backyard.
Yeah.
And then from there, he sees God providing for him food and water and all this kind of stuff again, and for the woman. And then the kid dies, her kid dies. He raises the kid from the dead, which I find funny because it says 3 times he spreads himself on him. And I picture in my mind that he body slams him 3 times. I don't know. Maybe this is the way I'm going. But 3 times, and then the kid wakes up and he's probably going, enough already.
Enough.
Brings him down there, and then the lady says, now I know that you are a prophet of God and the word of truth is in your mouth. So he's getting all this encouragement, and then God says, let's go. He does the battle with Baal, calls down fire, runs 35 miles, outruns chariots, gets there, and then one woman says, I'm going to get you, and he runs away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's tired. He's tired. He's done all this stuff, and I mean, even down to taunting those guys. That still makes me laugh. I love that part.
That's my favorite part too.
But then he runs away, and here's what is so cool in my perspective, is when he runs away and he's tired, he runs to Judah. Okay? Before, God has had him in all these dangerous spots, and yet he thought running away to be safe was in Judah, when God had kept him safe in all these danger spots.
Right.
So he runs down here, and then he falls asleep, and what happens? Now, I was raised a family of 4 boys, no girls. And I'm the youngest, so I always got it. Mm-hmm. My brothers did some interesting things. And one of the things I hated was when my mom sent them to wake me up. Mm-hmm. It was never nice. Mm-hmm. Never like, Danny, wake up, Danny, wake up. No, it was grab my feet, jump on me, or whatever. But here we got Elijah falls asleep, and what does the angel do? Almost as if when you read the story, it harkens back to a mother waking up a child. I mean, can you see your wife walking up to your youngest?
She's so good at it.
And she goes, dear, wake up,
Yeah, I know.
dear. And they just kind of gently do. That's how this angel wakes him up. And he says, this is hard for you. Wake up and eat.
Mhm.
And he gives him something to eat. And then maybe, I don't know, angel food? I don't know. So and then he says he goes back to sleep, and an angel wakes him up again. Not like my brothers, not whacking him and stuff. Wakes him up and then says, eat, for the journey is too hard for you.
Mhm.
And he goes this is one heck of a power bar, because 40 days and 40 nights he goes off and travels all the way down to Mount Horeb,
Mhm.
which is significant. You and I talked about
Yeah.
this last
Yeah.
week. Mount Horeb is where Moses went up and got the 10 Commandments. And if we remember the picture, what was the picture? There was flames on the mountain. There was wind. There was thunder. When God talked, it was like thunder and all this
Yeah.
kind of business.
Yeah, and I think the people.
That's power.
I think Horeb is like the area, and the Sinai is the
Right, he
is
goes up
the-
on the mountain,
Is,
right.
is the place that they were at. But I think that's interesting anyway. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
there is this. He goes to the very same place to meet with God, in the same place that Moses met with God.
Right. And look at what he does.
Yep.
Because he knew back then what was the punishment for going up on that mountain,
Death.
and what had he been asking for? He had been saying, "Oh, woe is me! I can't go on. I can't go on, and I'm not any better. Just take my life." So he's crawling up that mountain, thinking, "What?
He's gonna die.
He's going to die. God's going to give him what he wants and take him home or whatever." But he goes up there, and I love the question. This is something I wish I'm going. Say it, Josh. Say it. Say it. And when he goes up on a mountain, this is so cool because God asks him, "What are you doing here?"
Mm-hmm.
Those very words.
Mhm.
I mean, now think about it. Well, I mean,
You
I
told
would
me
have
to
said,
come.
"You told me to come."
Right.
Right? What are you doing here? And
Yeah.
I can hear God saying, "Look around you. Look around you. Look where you are. Why have I brought you here?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not dead."
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "But I am alone. I'm alone. I'm alone. I can't. I'm not any better than my ancestors."
Yeah.
And what does God say? He says, "Okay, we're going to show you some stuff." He sends the wind,
Mm-hmm.
wind that breaks rocks.
Breaks rocks out.
Holy crap! And then from there, what's the next one?
Earthquake.
Earthquake.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the same pictures that he knows about
Mm-hmm.
from when God showed up on a mountain, and then he shows what was the next one? Fire.
Yeah.
All right. He's thinking, "I'm done."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, a gentle whisper, and he comes out there and he realizes this is God, and then God says, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" "Because you brought me here." And he still complains, but I can hear a difference in his tone. And then God says, "All right, now you've rested, and I want you to know something. I esteem you like I esteem Moses. Because you and my man Moses were on this mountain together." And what's cool, I brought this up, and I don't know if you remember this, but remember at the Mount of Transfiguration, who are the two guys?
Those two.
Moses and Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
So God did esteem him as high as he esteemed Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that in the New Testament. So, and then he says, "Get back in." So it's this whole thing I see happen in my life over and over. You see it too. We've all been there. Where you're out there, you're doing battle for God, and you're loving on people, and you're doing something, and you get home and you get tired.
Yeah.
You get tired and you go, "I just can't do this. I'm not good at it. I can't. What good are my words? Nothing's happening, blah, blah, blah." And then God says, "Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Stop.
Mm-hmm.
Stop." And then I look back at this and go, "What are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Why have I brought you here now? Rest. I understand what you're made of.
Yeah.
Now let's go."
You know, the interesting thing too is when you talk about the still.
I'm sorry, I got all
you're
excited
good.
there.
No, that's awesome. When you talk about the still small voice, it was
Yes.
speaking. It was speaking loudly today.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was interesting to me because I had received, a few, text messages and things like that. But right after the service, a high school girl came up to me and said, "Josh, I want you to think about something." She handed me this card, this little note. She said, "Why do we run from the Father when we're supposed to run to the Father?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, and it was the still small voice was speaking loudly in church today, and she had talked about how in her Bible, which I thought was just another amazing part, is the fact that she's as I'm preaching or as she was hearing from God, she was looking into the Word, and she had said one of the notes had said, God hasn't given up on you, so you don't give up on Him.
Right.
And she just really wanted me to have this. I'm gonna treasure this piece of paper. I'm gonna keep it in my Bible, and it says a reminder that God's listening, or that we're listening to His small voice. And then another little perspective that somebody else had asked, that I in one of the text messages, so someone else God was speaking to, had shared with me that they wanted us to discuss some small little part of the scripture. In 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 37, it says, "O Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have brought them back to yourself." Now the interesting thing is they were reading in another translation, and it talked about the idea that these people had a change of heart. That was the word, change of heart. And so the question is, how can a person have a change of heart, and how do they then apply that to their life? And that was kind of the question that I had received earlier in the day, and I'm going to pass that off to you, Doc.
Well, it seems like my heart's changing all the time. Sometimes towards the good, sometimes towards the bad.
Yeah.
I wish that I could say it was always getting better, but we do go through times when, but either we're weary, or we haven't been nourished properly, or we just get beaten down. And I'm always amazed at how often some of the voices that should be the enforcer for me end up giving me the beating rather than the people that need to be fought off. And so you get discouraged. Now, here, understand that when Elijah was there, the nation was already divided. When we talk about what was going on, when we talk about Ahab and Jezebel, they were already in a fractured kingdom in the northern kingdom. Actually, one of the verses you read talked about Samaria, and we've talked about that. And all along, and a few weeks ago, even when I preached, I talked about the idols, how quickly it is that we turn to the idols. There was Moses had only gone 40 days from the time that they heard God's voice, giving the 10 Commandments. And literally what was taking place there is they were going right down the list of breaking every one of the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Okay? There will be no other gods. Oh yeah? We're going to make one. Don't make any idols. Here it is.
Don't bow down to them.
Yes. Keep my name holy. Well, what's Aaron out there doing? Here's
your God.
Here's the name of the Lord. This is Yahweh. They went bing, 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 bing in just 40 days. And just 40 days ago, they were saying, God, we want to be your people. Whatever it is that you want us to do, we will do. And now here they are at this point. And so we see this image where here's Elijah with the 850 prophets who had been brought in. And I'm sure these people were kind of going, oh, wait a minute, this is our king, our queen, they're the ones that are leading us in this, who do we turn to? And very quickly it is that we are always looking for the convenient, we're looking for the God that we can control. And that becomes part of the problem, is when the God that we've made out of our image of what God should be fails us. What do we do? And that's why we need to start listening to the still small voice of the real God. Because, do we expect God to be this huge ferocious wind all the time, or the earthquake, or the fire? Or can we be content with a God who's really whispering and telling us the truth?
Yeah, and one of the a person that came up to me after the service and said, sometimes they think that the idol that they follow in this world is safety, the idol of safety, of security. Right?
Oh yeah.
And what I don't want to get too far away from the original question, which was how are we being changed? How do we have a heart change? What does that mean, and how does that look like? And what you were just describing is all the idols and all the processes that people have gone through, but what ultimately has changed, maybe Aaron's heart in that story or later, or what changes these people's heart to follow?
Well, obviously the thing that changed their heart was seeing God frying the altar, but seeing the reality. And it was interesting that when Elijah says, "How long will you hesitate between two opinions?" there was crickets, because these people are looking at this. They're tired of serving Baal, and they don't want another god. So they're saying, "Hey, if there's no fire, we're good to go. We're leaving both of you." Then all of a sudden, God shows up, and you see him work, and you can't deny it. The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. And now there's truth, and you go forward. So I think the change comes from this. Even what we're doing here is spurring me on.
Understanding a little bit. Understanding, seeing, witnessing,
experiencing God,
okay.
Hearing, how did God work in your life this week? Like when we do the hey God and yay God, when I hear someone saying, "Hey, God has done this in my life, and I got to see him do something," it's like that encourages me, and I want to see it too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, one of the things that I think
forsake not the gathering yourselves together.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about is just a little bit of the humility that they probably had also felt on that mountain, right? The fact that they were trying to control something they couldn't control, and therefore it didn't work until Elijah did what he did on the mountain, and that would have been a pretty powerful moment of humility. Now, at the same time, I think of in our lives, we witness things all the time, and when we witness things that are, I think, outside of this world. When I say that, I think love is a powerful force that's outside of this world. I think moments where we witness miracles or we witness change of heart, when we see people who once lived a certain way have chosen not to live that way anymore. Maybe an alcoholic who was an alcoholic and now is not, or just different things, like they've surrendered or given their life over. There seems to be a moment or a something that has happened that has ultimately redirected that person's life.
Well, even this morning, you reminded us that Elijah was asking them to choose, and what I'm trying to remember the words that you used there, but we have to choose which of these is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is before the rain came.
Exactly, and so that really becomes part of the battle. In Romans, it describes it like this: that inside of us, we have this nature.
Yeah.
And we've chosen to describe it as the selfish part of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's something that's what's exactly the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the spirit.
Yeah.
And these two, the Bible says, they're at war with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And while we try to do all that we can to put to death our selfishness, back to Romans, in Romans 8, it says, hey, the law is powerless to do that. Mm-hmm. See, we think that we can overcome that and have a change of heart by doing all of these things. If I just pray enough, if I just go to church enough, if I just do enough good deeds and things like that, then I can change my heart. Mm-hmm. We don't have the power.
Right.
So how do we go about doing this? Let me tell you something. You can't. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can't. But what we were unable to do, God did. Mm-hmm. And the way that he went about doing that is he sent Jesus into this world to basically put that side of us to death. He wanted to destroy that and bring in a new life. See, that's why Jesus had to die, because it was putting to death that side of us. But then he rose from the grave to give us life, and it's that Spirit that comes into us that now empowers us to do what we weren't able to do before. And that really is the piece of this that was played out for us up on the mountain with Elijah. He's kind of saying, hey, we have all these people, and there they are, they're cutting themselves, and they're trying to manipulate God to do something for them, and it didn't work. And here's Elijah, and he knows God, and he's kind of saying, well, take care of this.
Yeah.
And God does it. And that's really what has to happen with our heart. We need to place our heart on the altar just like that, pour a bunch of water on it, and say, okay, God.
You do the work.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
do it.
And in the Old Testament, it was you were justified by faith.
Right.
I mean, there was a sense of justification by faith. Now, the other aspect of that, I think, is the
I'm going to use a word. I'm going to
idea
give you a
that-
word.
Yep.
Surrender.
Okay. Well, and the idea is that we are justified by faith, and God. The thought I have though is that sometimes it's not necessarily even just that I have more faith than some. God gives that faith to me, so there's still a part that God is working in me to have the faith to do something as well, and so that gets really complicated and things like that.
Well, but surrender. Look at God called Abraham. What did he do? He said, "Okay, I'll go. I'll go." God said, "Elijah, go talk to Ahab." Okay, I'll go. God said, "Philip, go talk to the Ethiopian. Go talk to this eunuch." Okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
There's a part of us that God builds by faith, but there's also the part of us that has to surrender, and we don't like that.
Well, and we're in a different time than the stories that are written in the Bible. You know what I mean? We're in a different time. Jesus has now entered after this story.
Right.
The power of the Holy Spirit has come and
But
dwelled in
our
it.
natures are still the same.
Nature's still the same.
Right,
but
we still have to surrender to His leading.
Absolutely, and I think those are the same
Right.
things. Faith and surrender and humility and all the things we just talked about are absolutely a part of it. At the same time, God is the same too, and He did this work, or He does the work inside of us. Why did He choose Elijah? Why did He pick Elisha? Why is He going after a guy like Abraham and Moses, who's reluctant, and Jeremiah, who cries all the time? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like God still had a purpose and a plan, and uses certain people for a certain time. And a lot of times when He does pick people, when you look at it in the Scripture, it was, well, that guy was righteous before. There was nobody else was righteous as him. At the time, Noah, or I'm just thinking of different people who God chose.
Okay, but here's this is my life's verse. It comes from Enoch, which is really in the genealogies, which is nuts. And Enoch lived 65 years, became the father of Methuselah. Then he lived 300 years and walked with God, and he was not, for God took him.
Yeah.
Well, what does it say there? He lived 365 years. But it says he lived 65 years, became the father of Methuselah, and then he walked with God for 300 years. It took him 65 years to figure out how to surrender, how to walk with Him in just this relationship that we're supposed to have. I mean, in my relationship with my wife, I have to surrender. People could take that a lot of different ways, but I surrender my selfishness because I want us to be successful. I surrender to her will, but no, I surrender to us as a couple. And then from there, we blossom. Now, if I don't surrender and get rid of selfishness and push that away and stuff, because Paul talks about that. Do not be selfish. Well, what's that assume? We're being selfish. Don't think about yourself more highly than you ought. Why? Because we do that. And we have to ourselves choose to surrender. And then when you surrender and you humble yourself, God's going to use you. He's going to use you.
What's interesting, tying the story into what we're talking about. God did not want for Israel to have a king.
Right.
He wanted to be their king.
Right.
And He told them, He said, if you have kings, here's what's going to happen.
He was right on target.
He was. You know,
Yeah.
not only is he going to raise taxes and stuff like that, but you watch out. They're going
He'll
to
take your
lead
finest
you.
lands. He'll take your
Yes.
finest people. He'll
Exactly.
take you this.
And he knew, he understood that there were going to come kings that were like Ahab and Jezebel, and they were going to lead the people astray. Where all along he wanted to be the one sitting on the throne. Literally, I believe that the Ark of the Covenant was the throne.
Mm-hmm.
It was shaped like a throne. And
That's why it's called the mercy seat.
it is. Absolutely.
Exactly.
He wanted to have this type of relationship with us. And yet we struggled with being that close to
Yeah.
God. And we always wanted to step it back further and
Well, we want
further
to
and
hide
further.
like the Garden of Eden in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, the shame that
Exactly.
we have, or living in the dark is a lot
Exactly.
better than, you know, even Jesus when he came, he said, I came to expose the darkness. You know, like I became the light to expose the darkness.
Yeah, and just like we've talked about for the past couple of weeks, when God was giving the Ten Commandments, He wanted them to hear His voice as He's giving it, and they
Yeah.
said, "No, no, 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 no!
Yeah.
Only go through Moses." Well, now we keep backing it away. Okay,
Yeah.
now we want a king, and we want all these other because it's a lot easier for us to hear from them, and that's why we have a hard time with our heart, is because instead of allowing God to really fix it, we would rather have these man-centered ways
Yeah.
to get the job done, and it's just not going to happen.
Well, it's an issue of intimacy as well. Like
It
the
is.
idea that, you think about the intimacy idea, right? Like,
Mhm.
like if I'm gonna be intimate with somebody, they're gonna know my flaws. They're gonna know my weaknesses. They're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna see, you know, who I am. And my wife and I are close in that intimate relationship, and so she sees those things. She recognizes the bad days and the good days.
Yeah,
and
your
all those
marriage
types of
isn't
things.
one long first date.
Yeah, and yet God has an intimate encounter with Elijah with a
Yeah.
still small voice. Like he's
Yeah.
saying, I still want you to know me in
Right.
an intimate way, which I think is the whole idea of what God has tried dealing with us, right? I mean, He can do what He desires and wants, but He's ultimately desires to have a relationship with His people, an intimate relationship with His people.
Yes.
And we
Yeah.
continue, just like Adam and Eve. What do we do after? You know, because we're sinful, we hide. We we hid from you because we're naked. Well, who told you you were naked?
Well, but look at that.
You know,
we hid, and what does God do? He comes in the garden to walk with us because they knew what it sounded like. I mean, when you look at the scriptures, they knew what it sounded like because we heard you walk in the garden. Well, they knew what it sounded like, so this is something that was normal.
Yeah,
And then when they sinned and screwed up, God comes in the garden.
they tried.
And He says, "Where are you?" Well, God knew where they were.
Yeah.
He knew where they were, and then He finds them and goes, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm hiding." "Why are you hiding?" "Well, I was naked." "Who told you you were naked?" This is God pursuing us.
So the intimate relationship with God, He has been faithful to us. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit more.
And He's pursuing.
How do we end up making the shift to be more faithful as people?
Well, that's why I love where you finished this morning with Psalm 91.
Mm-hmm.
And let me remind you of some of those words. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this concept of living in the shelter,
Mm-hmm.
tabernacling,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
that really, when the angel announces the coming birth to Mary, the name given is Emmanuel.
Yeah,
God with us.
Yeah.
God with us. He wants to tabernacle
With us.
with us. He is inviting us to come and to dwell with Him. And as we do that, you know what? These things that are plaguing everybody else,
Mm-hmm. Don't have to plague us.
why are you worried about that?
Yeah.
And that's why even last week we talked about, okay, when Jesus is ascending, getting ready to leave the planet, and He gives the Great Commission, He's telling them things like, hey, you know what? Most people are worried about things like snakes.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, because I am with you.
Right.
I will go with you. Therefore, you can go out and you can be my witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, that's what we see happening as the disciples who were with him. They went out and they don't even have to worry about these type of things. Yet here we are in today's world, and we get bent out of joint about small things
Yeah.
that are on the surface.
Yeah, and to be safe or not safe, to describe, it doesn't mean we can't be cautious or make choices that are going to
I love it when you
respect.
said, I'm not telling you to go run into traffic.
Right, and those types of things, because I think we could go a little bit too far to think, in a sense, we could go and just be careless or take unnecessarily type risks and things like that. But at the same time, my challenge or my thought on this whole topic was the idea of saying, I don't have to fear.
No.
I don't have to fear. And I was actually looking at that passage. I was trying to find another verse, but it was in Psalms 46 when it says, basically it says, you remember that passage where it talks, be still and know that I'm God. But before
Right.
that, in verse 2, it actually says, you do not have to fear, if the rocks give way or the earthquake happens. It's the same idea as Psalms 91, where if I tabernacle, if I dwell in the presence of the Lord, if I made a shelter with Him, then I find rest.
Right.
I find peace.
Right.
If there's something, and I love some of these old missionaries or people who have gone into, harm's way,
Yeah.
and it basically said, I'm just as safe in bed as I am in battle. What's his name?
Stonewall
Jackson. Or in any of these other types of people who've said, hey, in God's will, it's the safest place to be is in God's will. It doesn't matter if it's in a difficult place. Now, for me, I want to be faithful to my calling or the ministry we have here right now, and it seems to me that that's what we can do. Now, I got to encourage. I want to encourage this guy for a second. Last week he called me up and he says, "Hey," he goes, "I just want you to know I got your back." He goes, "You ever need me to drive somewhere, talk to somebody, do this, do that, and the other thing?" And I'm kind of going, "Wow, thanks, Dan." He's an enforcer. Don's always had my back for 20 years now, and I appreciate that as well. But we have a couple enforcers out there, going out there that are faithful. I can trust my life with you guys. It was actually really fun today when I walked out of here. There were people coming up to me going, "I got your back."
Yeah, but will he let us drive the car?
Anytime you want. Anytime you want.
Well, I think one thing that you were mentioning that's really important to me is that intimacy with God, and right here when Peter, and I love this because we've been doing that whole video series about the chosen, and I picture this stuff, and when here Peter ends up there just tired and he's been fishing all night, and it cracks me up because I like to fish. And what I hate though about fishing is when someone's got genius advice. Like, oh, you need to use this color. Or you need to use the other. Yeah, so, well, how many fish are in your bucket right now? Oh, nothing. So here's Jesus. He's on the shore. Peter and those guys don't know. And they fish all night. They catch nothing. And then some idiot on the shore, who we know is Jesus, says, throw your net on the other side. And I can imagine, if I was Peter, I would have stood up and said, 5 feet's going to make a difference. Why don't you shut up? Then he's persistent, right? So he finally throws it over there, and all of a sudden it's just fish. And instead of walking the water, this time Peter realizes it's Jesus, and this time Jesus made him swim. He gets to shore, and here's what's so cool about this to me, okay? It says here, when Peter had gotten there, it says here, and Jesus said, "Come and have breakfast." Jesus, right here, he says here, bring someone. And when they got there, it says he had breakfast. And I'm thinking, this is the God of the universe that created all this magnificent stuff in all of creation. I mean, stars and nebulas and massive stuff that is so dangerous that would destroy us. And yet we want to see them, and volcanoes and all this kind of stuff. And yet, he made breakfast. He made breakfast. First, he wants to spend a meal with his disciples. The God of the universe wants to be personal. And like you were saying, we like to make ourselves a little more comfortable by being religious. You know, like, oh, if I do this, like you're saying, if I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this, and that'll get me closer to God. So no, it's just press in. Be still and know. It doesn't say be still and read this and this and this and this. It says be still, stop, realize, I'm right there. I got you. I'm okay. You know, I just made breakfast. Have some fish. I mean, that's, to me, when I see that, and I know that Jesus is God, He cares about just a meal. It's just, and when I see that and I let that envelop wash over, that makes me want to walk out into our community and meet whomever God wants me to meet. And step out and do something. Now, do I do that all the time? No. Why? Because God reminds us, be still and know. Well, why does He have to remind us? Because we forget.
You know, we talk a lot about the importance of us loving others, that this helps us.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the Great Love chapter, it says something interesting. It says that we will be like Him, for we shall see Him as He really is.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're describing here, this intimacy,
Right.
is when you are able to spend that time seeing God
Right.
as He really is,
Mm-hmm.
then we become like Him. And it's learning to hang out in the spots where He is and spending that time with Him and being willing to, if He says throw the net on the other side and come have breakfast with me.
Your example is perfect. Look at Zacchaeus. What does it say? He ran ahead because he just wanted to see Jesus.
Exactly.
He didn't want to have a meeting with him and have lunch with him and stuff like that. He just wanted to see him. Because remember, he was chief tax collector. He was a traitor. Everybody hated him, and yet he had all this power, and yet he runs ahead and climbs a tree.
And what does
And
Jesus
then what
do?
does Jesus do? Stops and says, I want to have a meal with you. Again, the creator of the universe saw a man's heart who was seeking him.
The two stories, John at the end of in 21 there, it says when they saw the loaves, then they recognized Jesus.
Yeah, is that what it says?
Isn't that what it says?
Well,
there?
that's on the road to Emmaus.
The road to Emmaus.
Yeah,
Okay,
when they
that's
stopped,
it's
they
in
said
another
recognize.
spot. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which is just another connection to witnessing or connecting to what Jesus has done in those moments in the Last Supper.
Right.
Jesus is making these connections. But what I find interesting is the other story in Revelation when we use it for a lot of times for reaching out to people. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone comes in,
Here's my voice.
Here's my
Lest me
voice.
come in.
Lest me come in. I will what?
I will
Eat, have a
sup
meal
with
with
him.
him.
I'll sit down and,
Yeah, and-
that shows that God cares about the small details. Because what it says here, right here, this is so cool. It says right here. So when they got on the land, they saw a charcoal fire already, and fish placed on it and bread.
Yeah.
He's personal. He wants to be intimate.
Well, and I think that's the challenge for the people here is we're sort of going to
Yeah.
start wrapping this up, but is that He's knocking. He's still knocking. He's still faithful. He's still at the door knocking and saying, "Will you follow me? Will you not choose the world but choose me?" I really felt like the message of James chapter 1 this morning had a powerful. It was actually really interesting. I was writing the sermon kind of idea. I kept on hearing that, Elijah and the two opinions and the divided that those people were.
Right.
I thought, man, I have to go to that place there in James because it really talks about, wisdom and needing wisdom and guidance. But the idea still is by faith. We understand by faith, putting faith in God, then we can see, then we can know. And the idea is asking God for that and having that intimate connection, making that fit so that so I don't have to be shaky. I don't have to, wonder. I can have confidence. I can be secured. I can be strong. And I think when Elijah did the miracle and the fire came down and all those times, maybe that just solidified it for some that were there, or even for us today. We can have another moment where we're going to go, okay, I'm going to follow that guy.
Like the woman,
Yeah.
when he raised the kid from the dead, says, now I know
Yeah.
that you're a prophet and the word of truth abides in you. And I think when we surrender like this, when we have this intimate, then we can hear that small voice you're talking about. And that's when, what you were talking about, that's when all of a sudden you know, hey, I need to go for a walk. And you know what? I'm going to meet somebody.
Mhm.
And I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going because for some reason I need to go for a walk. And then, bam, bam, things happen. Because God's always working in the back. Because just like Adam and Eve, He sought them. He sought after them.
Mhm.
I see it over and over in the scriptures.
It's pretty cool.
He's always seeking, like the Ethiopian eunuch.
Yes.
Always. So.
Yeah, my word of encouragement for you, as we're going through this, is to truly make God your refuge.
Yeah.
That's the only place that is truly secure. And like Josh reminded us of today, He has already ordained our days. We don't have to worry about things
Yep.
and get uptight about stuff that we hear on the news or any of it. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is what God says. And you need to make sure that you are in a place where you are hearing God's voice, where you are seeing Him as He really is. And, you know, my biggest fear, because we don't have as close of a connection now that we've kind of been asked to, you know, keep our distances, is it's hard for me to get a read on whether people are keeping their eyes on the Lord or they're keeping their eyes on all these things, you know. But as we remove the things that so easily encumber us and fix our eyes on Jesus, then we're able to win the race. And
that's when you get the peace that passes understanding.
That's what happens.
Right.
That's what happens.
Right.
So let Him be your refuge.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Final thought?
I totally agree with that. Because when you're in His hand, you can walk through the fire.
Yes.
I mean, cancer doesn't matter.
Right.
Sickness, this or that, the other thing, cars breaking down. You know He's in charge, and He cares about the details, and He knows what He's doing. So we can just rest, and then when you're doing that, you don't worry about anything.
This is going to be a great transition to next week when we talk about make room. Make room for God. Make Him the refuge. Make room. And one of the things we're going to talk about during the Advent season, Christmas season, is really the idea of that we need to make room for hope. We need to make room for peace. We need to get these types of things inside of our life and be able to celebrate the fact that Jesus did come to give that to us.
Nice.
And so we're going to be looking at those in the next about 4 weeks or so, and we'd love to have you partner and watch and check us out. 8 o'clock next Sunday, and who knows? Maybe we'll bring up the hoverback. Type in there if you want hoverback,
Yes.
and we could have Pastor Josh and the two Bible scholars between two Bible scholars.
All right.
Thanks for joining us tonight on Pastor's Perspectives. We'll see you guys later.